I actually like DeviantArt Eclipse. Okay, hold on, let me explain. Hello and welcome to Art Block, the show where we talk about art and how it's made. I'm your host Spirit, and today I'll be reviewing DeviantArt Eclipse. Now for a bit of context, I've been using the site since around 2013, split between two accounts with the first one being abandoned. I've been around since premium membership and the original logo, and though not a whole lot has changed since then, the current version of Eclipse seems to be taking a modernized approach. Now before I start with my critiques, I want to discuss a few of the site's new elements that I thought were a nice touch. First and foremost is going to be the incorporation of a dark theme. Now I personally have fairly sensitive eyes, and even though I do feel like DeviantArt Eclipse's dark theme could use some improvements, I've always found that dark or night themed apps tend to catch my eye more. They feel more comfortable to look at, if that makes sense. Second thing is I like the new page format. Maybe it's just me, but I personally feel that having the option to customize a banner is a lot better than having a bunch of broken custom boxes. Now that's not to say I think custom text boxes and stamps don't have their place, but at the same time, using custom boxes and skins could be something more manageable in the future. If I am going to suggest one thing now, I would have a template released so that people can crop or create banners to match the format best. Thirdly, something I like about the new version of the site is the little shop tab, which was originally just reserved for prints. Now while a lot of artists, including myself, don't use the point system, I think having a widget to allow you to display your commission prices and your select currency, as well as how to contact you if someone is interested in commissions, is a good idea. For Affinity also has this kind of tab, so if DA is looking for business-oriented use, I think having the ability to display your prices without having to go through the point system would be very helpful for the site and its artists. Fourth, and this is going to be short but sweet, but I do appreciate how they added an original work option to the submissions. Similar to how Reddit has original content, I feel like this is intended to help promote original work more, since original stuff doesn't really have the advantage of fan groups or other means of getting attention. Lastly, the biggest thing I believe was a benefit to this update is separating watch stuff from feedback messages. I will talk about both the feedback system and the watch system when it comes to the improvement notes, but I feel like this is a good ability to have to go through my feedback without having to go through my watch information every single time. Now then, throughout my exploration of DA Eclipse, I took a few notes of where the new layout could be improved. I am aware that the site is still a work in progress, and the current version of the beta hasn't even updated stuff like the groups tag. However, this video will hopefully provide some general insight on where I feel would be a good direction to go. First things first is going to be the general layout and/or formatting of the new site. Now the first thing and probably most common complaint about the new site is that it's far too dark, and makes the artwork kind of stick out a bit awkwardly. Instead of going with full black, I would suggest doing either a 70% or 80% gray. I've created a bit of a mock-up on how this could be done, which I feel could still help the art on the page stand out, but not enough to hurt one's eyes. Another thing pertaining to the color of the site is that I feel having a customizable color palette would be a good direction to go. What do I mean by this? Well, if you happen to be a frequent of Twitter, something that Twitter has on one of their options is to change your theme color. Essentially what this would do is it would change the entire site background and maybe some of the logo colors to suit a theme more akin to your style. This would allow for everyone to have their own custom experience, as well as make the site more comfortable. Then, if you truly wanted to, you could have the classic DA green as the default option. The next thing I will mention when it comes to the layout is that browsing often feels a bit too claustrophobic. I understand that the idea might be to fit as many deviations on screen as possible, but I feel that having more space between them would be good. Perhaps having a slightly lighter box to frame the deviations would be beneficial to help them stick out a little bit more. This would also be good to add in the watch section as well. Speaking of watch sections, one thing I would consider is having a different silhouette for each type of submission. I personally liked having the elongated boxes and smaller squares for status updates. As we speak, having the little titles isn't really going to be enough to help distinguish them. Having a custom silhouette for each type of deviation will not only make them easier to tell which is which, but will allow people to more easily make their way through watch information. I will say one problem that may arise from having watch submissions separate from the feedback is that people who aren't outright searching for art or are more business-oriented may not favorite as many pieces. For example, I watch hundreds of creators, and the only reason why I actually favorite any of their works is because I simply go through them and look at them before I go through my feedback. I think a simple way to fix this is to have a little number pop up in the replacement of the green dot whenever an individual posts a deviation or journal. This will also highlight the area of interest so that people are more drawn to favorite works. Finally, and this is more of a nitpick, but the bright orange of core needs to go. I don't care if you make it green, white, gray, or what, but the bright orange contrasts way too much with the black and green and it hurts my eyes. As an art website, I think it's going to be important to make sure that your color palette is coherent and pleasing to the eye. Next up, let's talk about page customization. Now the first thing I want to talk about is the About page. Personally, I feel it's a bit clunky. I think the major issue is that the page goes on for too long, which can easily be fixed by simply making all the information horizontal rather than in grids. I think having the About page be more akin to a Facebook profile or a LinkedIn profile might help it appear more professional and majorly cut down on the amount of empty space there is on the page. Here's a mock-up I made just for an example. Now when it comes to the homepage itself, I have a few critiques. The first thing is that the page banner is just a little bit too big. I think it would be a cool feature to have the height of the banner be cut in half and then maybe have some of the deviations scrolling across, or if you would like to, you can upload a static banner. At this point, I would suggest to the staff to maybe make a template for banners, with a pixel aspect ratio and general field that would be ideal for the text. This would also allow people to get more creative with their designs and make their art feel a lot more like a business. An idea I had for user pages was to be able to upload a background image which would be automatically darkened or maybe slightly blurred. This would allow somewhat of a compromise for the loss of custom text boxes, as well as to give each user page a little bit of personalized pop. Speaking of custom boxes, I do feel that custom text boxes were a bit necessary when it comes to displaying information. Having custom text boxes can allow people to more accessibly read when your commissions are open and other statuses. I think in general every little section such as spotlight should have a slightly lighter box around it that would help distinguish between the regions in the background. In terms of page customization, I feel that having a drag and drop method from before was far easier than simply adding more regions below each other. If I'm honest, I think having complete control, being able to drag and drop anything you want to either side of the screen, would be very helpful for allowing people to make their pages the way they want without having to deal with the lines of code. Last thing I will mention in terms of galleries, and this is more of a personal thing, but I feel that having the folders at the top feels just a bit clunky. I would ask that they get moved back to the side without the arrow scrolling method. It makes it a bit harder to navigate, and most people probably aren't going to be aware of the other folders. Okay, now moving on to the watch and feedback info. I'm going to make this brief because there isn't much to talk about, at least for me. My two main suggestions are going to be to simply change the feedback notifications to something a little less bright, since the dropdown currently appears as white. Second thing would be to just have a select all option for watch notifications without going to the view all option. Because if you're a part of a lot of groups like I am, you don't really have the time to go through the extra clicks to remove the hundreds of submissions. Alright, so let's talk about the mature content tag. Now, I personally keep the display mature content box unchecked because I personally don't like seeing a bunch of pinups and sexual content. However, if there's a piece of mature work that may simply contain ideologically sensitive material, such as a bit of gore or political statements, then I don't usually mind giving it a look. However, in the new version, it seems the Display This Deviation Anyway button has been removed. I personally feel that this function still remain available, at least to users who are over the age of 18. I understand people tend to be a bit sneaky with a lot of this stuff, so if you want to keep it from the under 18s, then I would at least understand why. I will say I'm glad you blurred the picture rather than turning it into a gray block. It gives a hint of what's going on and will help users know the general idea of whether they want to remove the filter. Seen here, we have examples of how I would go about mending this problem, emphasis on the ones on the right. While users who are over 18 will simply have a blurred image, users under 18 will have a classic gray box. This will hopefully somewhat prevent anyone who is under the age of 18 from seeing the full picture. Second thing I would recommend is having different thumbnail options for mature content. Mature content on DeviantArt bombs when it comes to favorites and views, and as a result a lot of the artists will generally upload it without the mature content filter so it gets more attention. Here are my main suggestions on how to fix that. For moderate mature content, allow users to create a cropped version of the image that would be safe for work to help display the general idea without exposing too much, but have the full display of the deviation be blurred until the user clicks Display Deviation. For severe mature content, have the thumbnail be slightly blurred and place a watermark stating it is 18+ to help advise users of the severity. I've included a sample of how this would be best executed in my opinion. Lastly, I just have some general tips when it comes to the updates to the site, and some general ideas of features that may help improve the overall experience. First idea would be to have an Undiscovered tab, which features quality artists with less than 5k watchers. This could be put up next to Browse and would give newer artists opportunities to grow. Second idea would be to have any popular pieces that reach the front page undergo some sort of screening to make sure they are safe for work and abide by guidelines. I've noticed a lot of sexualized and uncensored works will often be promoted to the front page, and I and others have repeatedly complained about this. I know it might be an extra workload, but surely there are community volunteers or another job opportunity that might help fix this problem. Thirdly would be to have an option to upload custom watermarks for your work. YouTube also has this option, and though I personally embed my watermarks into my files, I feel that having the option to upload your own watermark would be a great way for artists to protect their work in their own custom way. So these are my main suggestions for the current version of Eclipse. If you have any suggestions on how you would improve the site, please do leave them in the comments below. I'm sure the staff would be very appreciative to hear as much feedback as possible. I do want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to talk about this topic and hearing what I have to say. DeviantArt has been a part of my life for years now, and having the opportunity to improve the site for the future is something that makes me feel my contributions are really worth it. Links to my pages are in the description below. Thank you all for watching, I'm Spirit, and I'll see you next time.